We're back to the Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment. I always love to catch up with comedian Tommy Davidson. Tommy, thanks for calling. In Living Color and much, much more. Vacation Creation, how are you? And I know you're pumped up always when you get to perform in front of a live audience. How much do you love when you go back to your roots, which is comedy, right in those comedy clubs?
It's the best. It's the best. It's like surfing versus skateboarding. If you fall on a skateboard, you're going to get hurt. You know, if you're surfing, you fall, you got water, you know. And that's how comedy is. Stand-up comedy is just, it's the freedom to move around and think what I want and express what I want. I don't have to depend on somebody else reading the line. I don't have to depend on the camera. It's all coming out of my mind. You know, it's me and the audience.
And Tommy, is that the easiest to promote when you promote comedy gigs? Because this is just your passion, right? When you go out on stage, you never know what you're going to talk about, right? I mean, you prepare yourself, but you always are ready for that audience reaction to see where you're going to go next.
Yeah, it's like a runway. You know, you got to check all the coordinates. You know, make sure your altitude is right. Check everything before you land that baby. You know, and that the runway is like the audience. You know, I always go out before the show and kind of take a look. You know, and just take them in and see who's there, and just let my mind do the rest. But you can ask any stand-up. That's the pearl. That's the pearl. You know, we do movies, we do TV, we do all this stuff. We've been fortunate, the ones who do all the other things. But they'll tell you, comedy. And it's risky.
It is. And everyone will, and you never know when those hecklers are going to show up, right, Tommy? You never know when those hecklers are going to show up in the audience.
Yeah, I call them snipers. Snipers, yeah. You never know when the snipers are going to come. You can't see them sometimes. So you just got to duck when you hear the bang.
All right, so first coming up on June 6th, it's a great foundation, the Sarcoma Oma Foundation Comedy Benefit. You're going to be one of the big stars at this event. I know you're excited about any time when it comes back to giving back, right, Tommy?
Very. It's, you know, there's a lot that happens in my life that's really good, you know, and that's the reason I'm here, is to give that good back, you know, just to work that circle right on back, you know, like the Lion King, you know, circle of life. And it just feels good to just help people, you know, with the direction that our country has been going lately, with all the negative events, all the tragic events. You know, there could be nothing better than to go against all that and just keep doing good, positive things, 100%.
So true. I mean, we are so divided as a nation, Tommy, now, and so many people are just really angry at each other, which we've seen in history before, Tommy. It's just not the first time it's happened, but it's just a sad time for us in our nation. And so people have to laugh about certain things, right?
Yeah, we're that doctor that comes in where nothing else can heal it, and we have to laugh about it. You know, it's our reality, but it's nothing new. You know, we've been through, you know, multiple periods of that were just like this in our past, and we learned from it. You know, and this is actually, to me, a very positive, because, you know, when the going gets rough, the rough get going, and that would be us. You know, that would be the Italians, that would be the Polish, that would be the Germans, that would be the African Americans, that would be the Native Americans, that would be the Mexicans. You know, that would be the Irish. That would be all of us. You know, it's finally another time where all of us have to take a look over into the other yard and say, hey, man, grab a rake.
Exactly, because what if you're that other person, Tommy? What if you're that other person that's dealing with that hatred and difficulty and challenges? We've all been there in some sort of way, some people more than others, and yet we have to understand, are we doing the same thing to someone else? Because it doesn't matter if we are different than somebody else. If we're going after that other person and choosing to attack that other person feels it too. Words hurt more than sometimes violence in certain ways. Pain versus words. Words last longer.
And if we fall for the old eye for an eye, then we're all blind.
Exactly. And so you're going to have a cool group of guys at the Laugh Factory on Wednesday, June 6th for the event. Louis Anderson will be there, Craig
I
Robinson,
got a crew.
Earthquake. Yes. Yeah. So are they
Who's at
excited?
his best?
I'm
Oh my
sure.
God.
I'm sure they're pumped up too, right, for this event.
Oh, they're pumped up. They're pumped up. You know, as soon as I called, they said, "I'm there. I'm there. Let me know. Let me know I'm there." You know, ironically, Louis Anderson was the first person to take me on the road when I started out in comedy.
Really?
It's a good way to repay him for what he did. He said, "I want Tommy Davidson on the road with me." You know, and I was playing the comedy clubs in L.A. and he liked me, and it was the first time I went on the road. He afforded me that opportunity. I love him. Funniest guy, man, one of the funniest guys ever, and one of the sweetest guys ever.
And Tommy, when you're with him and like when you're on the road with him, I'm sure you have a lot of stories, right, from traveling with Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Ones you can't say on the air,
man.
yeah.
Louis,
Yeah.
you ever seen what was it, Zootopia?
Yes.
Yeah, you remember the sloth
Yes.
at the post office?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Louis moving at that speed. You know, so he's moving at that speed. You know, and I'm like a ferret on espresso. You know, and so the mix. You know, they go for me. You know, and then he come in and go. But it turned out to be a really good mix for us. It really did.
So tell me again, what this foundation's benefits? Explain the whole thing for our audience, especially for people that want to go check out the red carpet. Again, is at 6:45 Wednesday, June 6th, and the doors open at 7 at the Laugh Factory for this event.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is a very rare cancer. Only 1%, you know, of the cancerous diseases shares this particular disease. And so this organization really circled around themselves and really is working on harnessing some attention to come that way, because the end result is still the same. And they're going to need research just like everyone else. So, you know, I'm always for the underdog. And my mom died from a very rare form of cancer. So, you know, I have a personal affinity towards anyone who struggles with that, because I know how tragic it is and how it affects families. And so here's a chance for me to take all of that pain, you know, that I went through, and harness that into good and help somebody else. So it's going to be a really good night.
Well, the cast of characters on stage, and I'm sure all you guys are some different material than you've seen before, especially when material's very easy to write, isn't it, Tommy, in this day with all these crazy things going on for comedy with your skits? Yeah.
It is. You know, it's kind of like an obstacle course too, because everything is becoming sensitive as well. You know, when you're talking about, you know, our young students losing their lives, or young African American men, being brutalized. You know, when we're talking about those kind of things, and on top of, you know, being in several foreign wars, on top of, you know, trying to make sure that everybody has health care somehow, you know, it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with people, you know, and people having some balance in their lives and having what they need in this country. And so when you're dealing with those kind of issues, you know, it can be tough to negotiate those curves. But that's the magic of a comedian. You know, somehow we can pull that trick off. I could never do heart surgery, but, you know, have jokes will travel.
All right. And again, you're going to also be at the Laugh Factory some more other times. People need to check you out as well, Tommy, for all those. And there's tour dates in Philly and New York as well that you're going to be around. You'll be traveling to do some more comedy gigs as well, right, Tommy?
Yeah, I'm doing comedy at clubs around the country. And then me, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Sean Wayans, and David Allen Greer got together, and we're doing an In Living Color comedy tour. We're calling it the Off Color Tour.
Oh,
so we've been hitting casinos around the country and theaters around the country and coming to a theater or a casino near you. And we finally got back together after 25 25 years. 25 years. And it feels good. It feels really good.
Oh, Tommy, so all that could be at your website, right? For sure, to find out all that information?
Yes, TommyDavidson.net.
Okay.
TommyDavidson.net. You can reach it all.
Hey, Tommy, we're definitely going to check it out. I'd love to hear about that. Again, we love In Living Color, and I talked off air about how much you like the Vikings. We'll see maybe a Vikings-Steelers Super Bowl. Let's see a Vikings-Steelers Super Bowl.
Huh?
Yeah. Let's see Vikings-Steelers Super Bowl.
I'd like to see that, actually.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So we'll see
to see that.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, if you guys don't get robbed again.
Come on now, the Patriots can't rob us again, right? We'll see. But good talking to you, Tommy. Best of luck.
They can't rob you again.
And we'll have to catch up soon, okay?
You got it. Thanks so much, man. Tell everybody there I said what's up. Pittsburgh is one of my favorite places, the Improv down there by the riverfront over there.
All right.
It's a really great club for me, and that's a blue-collar, real deal city, and you better be funny because if it ain't, they won't laugh.
We're back to Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment, and the questions I have for this guest at the beginning, she might laugh at because she probably won't get them again throughout the show, but I'm excited to welcome to the program Aisha Tyler. We're going to talk about Unapologetic on the show. Aisha, thanks for calling, but I'm going to talk about two of the shows I remember you most on, by the way. But how are you?
Okay, I'm good. I'm really good. How are you?
Fantastic. First thing is that my kids remember you, and they're huge fans. I have 5 kids. Mother Nature. How was that experience, again, for the Santa Claus to be Mother Nature? I'm sure you're discovered all the time by little kids that come up to you that watch this movie over and over and over again and remember you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fun thing about those movies, and they are the kind of movie that many watch over and over again, is every year at Christmas time, those movies run, ad nauseum on cable. So you just get this whole new, group of fans every year, which is super sweet. And it was a blast. It was a blast playing Mother Nature in the Santa Claus movies. And now they're like strangely these kind of lovely family classics. Playing the character was fun. The outfit was not fun. I could not sit or go to the bathroom in that thing all day. So I was just a mental ninja the entire time. But it was a really, really great experience.
And you said during Christmas season, but also we play Christmas movies sometimes year-round in families where they pull out that DVD and play it. So you're seen so many times for a, not a guest starring type role, but you would never have thought when you auditioned for this that this would just continue to play over and over again as that Christmas classic, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And when you do a movie, you don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know if it's really going to connect with people. So what's been really lovely is, we just made that movie. The first one has been a hit. I didn't come until Santa Claus 2. So at that point, yeah, it had a following. We had a fan base. But, you don't have no idea how people are going to receive a film. And it was a great, great experience. And people who know the movie really well will recognize that most recently there was a pretty famous performance that Beyonce did on the Grammys, and everybody was saying that she was dressed up like Mother Nature in that performance. So you still have a side-by-side with my Mother Nature and Beyonce, which, is very flattering for me.
And your first kind of experience in the talk show game, because we're going to talk about Unapologetic, is Talk Soup. And I remember you completely from Talk Soup as well. That must have been an amazing experience to start out your career like in that kind of a genre and learning the whole process, because you're pretty much a jack of all trades, actress, talk show host, voiceover,
true.
Everything.
Yeah, and so Talk Soup, which I loved and was so happy to have been able to be a part of. I was a fan of that show before I got that job. I watched it when, Greg Kinnear was on, and then when John Henson was on. So I knew it just as a fan. And there's nothing cooler, for a performer than to get on a show that you love just as a television fan. And it was a great experience. I mean, that was a cult hit for a long time on E! It came back again with Joel McHale and continued on and had this really great life. But, when I made it back in the day, it was just this little green screen show where we just made jokes about talk shows, and it was a really great start. I mean, I'll always be so grateful and like really honored to have like had that as a part of the start of my career for sure.
Exactly. And your background, and we're going to get right into Unapologetic, is was it first like in media? Was that how you started, or was it acting? What was it to kind of get Talk Soup?
No, I started out as a stand-up. I started out as a stand-up comedian. So that was my background as a stand-up, and I've been a touring stand-up comic when I got to LA, and I was doing a little bit of acting, and saw that they needed somebody, that they were auditioning people to host Talk Soup, and chase that job down, just with passion and motivation. And it took a really long time. I auditioned, and I waited almost 6 months before I heard that I got the job. But the great thing about stand-up comedy is that it makes you really nimble. You're able to kind of deal with any situation and pivot in the moment and make stuff up on the fly. So that really helped me when I was, doing Talk Soup, because I was essentially just kind of stand up at a really ugly purple chair. And then, going on to do things like Friends and 24 and CSI, and going into kind of more straight acting, and then coming back to do the Talk, which was live talk.
Exactly. So let's talk about Unapologetic and how that's different than some other talk shows and stuff like that on AMC. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Unapologetic is a late night talk show. Unapologetic with Aisha Tyler, and it's different in the way that it started, because it's an after show for a brand new show called Dietland, which is also premiered at the Cocktail Fest on the night. And if people know the show The Walking Dead, then they know the show The Talking Dead, which comes on after The Walking Dead, and it's kind of like a post show The Walking Dead. Our show is similar but not the same, because it plucks issues or plot points that have happened on Dietland out from the show, and then really expands it out into the real world, into what's happening right now, into what's happening in popular culture, into what's happening in politics, in entertainment, in media, and specifically through the lens of our post-Me Too culture. It's really talking about issues that affect women and men everywhere, every day. So, and it's fun. It's not we talk about serious stuff, but in a really playful way. It's a show that even if you don't watch Dietland, you can enjoy our show, because it's comedy driven and it's a good time. And we just want people to be thinking about the issues of the day, but in a really fun and playful and upbeat way. And the premiere of the show was just, it was amazing. So we're having a really good time.
And it's interesting when you talk about the issues of the day, they come up fast and hard, especially this week, Aisha, just to kind of think about just the news now.
Oh, wow.
Of Anthony Bourdain. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
When I saw that on Facebook, I'm like, wow. Two big suicides of two amazing talents. It's just really sad. It's a sad weekend for
extraordinary
suicide.
Talent. Anthony Bourdain. And Anthony and I were friendly. He did my podcast, Girl on Guy, many, many years ago. In fact, he did the first season of my podcast. And then I ended up, I really admired him. He was a brilliant mind and did really extraordinary work. And I ended up hosting a show that he had created called The Getaway, that aired on Esquire, the Esquire Network. And I saw him as a mentor and as someone who, I wanted to be like when I grew up. And I think the really tragic thing about suicide is it affects, it can affect anyone.
Yes.
The smartest, most intelligent, most accomplished people can be struggling with depression. Anthony was in a new relationship. He was in love. So it's so shocking to see that. But the other terrible thing about suicide is that they tend to come in clusters, because someone sees someone that might have been thinking about it, and then they see someone else has done it. And a lot of times it can trigger a suicide in another person. So for everybody listening right now, if you were thinking about suicide, if you were having suicidal ideations, or if you know anybody that is, please get help, because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
And it's that's great, a great message, Aisha, and I agree with you as well. I had my co-host on yesterday. We're kind of talking about this, and she said, and she's going to become a doctor, and she said flat out, the bottom line is we treat broken bones, but we don't know how to treat mental illness, and we need to learn that it's just like a broken bone.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go and get help. Like if we broke a bone,
Yeah,
for sure. It's sad.
And people feel like it's a permanent state. It's not a permanent state, and it can be helped. And we have to normalize mental health in this country. People are ashamed to talk about it, and other people who don't know how to talk about it, so they're embarrassed. They don't. It's an illness like any illness. It's normalized that people need to be able to talk about the fact that they're in therapy or that they need therapy and that they're feeling sad. And it should be a normal conversation, like I have a cold, or I have the flu, or I have diabetes, I have depression, or I'm bipolar. And the more we talk about it, the more we get it out in the open, the more lives we're going to save.
So I'm excited to welcome to the program author Roy Sekoff. He's the author of, and this is Lacks Self-Control, his memoir. He is the editor of the Huffington Post and president and co-creator of Huffington Post Live and winner of 3 straight Webbies for Best News and Information Channel. Again, Roy, I could talk about your titles forever. How are you, Roy?
Hey, nice to talk to you, Neil.
All right, so let's kind of just jump right into the specifics about, how this whole book came about. You're so busy. How could you even write a book, Roy? Really? Come on now. All the different things I just brought in the title and everything?
Actually, what happened was, after 11 years of building the Huffington Post and HuffPost Live, from 4 people to 800 people, across 17 different countries, I decided to pull the ripcord and take a break from the 24/7 news cycle. I've been commuting back and forth between L.A. and New York on a weekly basis for 4 years, and I'd seen enough of airports, to last me a lifetime, and I decided to take a little bit of break. So I took a break, and for a year I willfully did nothing. I just drove my daughter to carpool, and I took long walks, and I just tried to cleanse myself, try to figure out who I was outside of that crazy 24/7 news cycle, outside of the Huffington Post. And after a year, I decided to dip my toe back into the water of creativity, and wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I thought, maybe I'll start with some of these true stories that I've accumulated over my life and that I tell over dinner, or that I, through the years over drinks at a late night, have a few and tell the funny stories. And I started, and once I started doing that, they just poured out of me, Neil. It was like this creative tsunami. So I ended up just writing every day for 8 to 10 hours a day. Luckily, I developed a lot of discipline over those years of being on deadline all the time. So even without a deadline, I just wrote like a madman, trying to keep up with my fevered brain. And the result was, it's lack self-control, true stories I waited until my parents died to tell. And it's not really a straight-up memoir. It's not like, Bruce Springsteen's telling the story of his life, how he went from freehold to superstar. These are just funny stories that happened to me when I was a kid, when I was an adolescent, when I was a teenager, all the way through adulthood and working at the Huffington Post. So I had 2 goals. I wanted to be as funny as I possibly could, and I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could. And, I leave it to people to say what they think of whether I accomplished those goals, but so far the early reviews seem to indicate that I did.
Well, and that's fantastic. And so you're telling stories throughout. So we kind of see how Roy became Roy, and then how Roy was able to get this huge opportunity with the Huffington Post and all those stories. So I guess one of the questions I think everyone wants to ask is, how did this Huffington Post start, and how did you get involved in all this?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is I had met Arianna Huffington, sort of tangentially many years before. She was working on a project called the Shadow Conventions, which were in 2000, these alternative conventions that were held to go along next to Shadow, basically, the Democratic and Republican conventions. So that was like an 8-week gig. And that 8-week gig turned into 17 years. And I worked with her for 5 or 6 years before HuffPost popped into people's heads, which happened after the 2004 election, when progressives across the country couldn't believe that John Kerry had lost to George Bush, particularly in the way that it happened. Yes. John Kerry, a war hero, painted as a coward, and George Bush, not a war hero, painted as sort of the great leader. And so progressives across the country scratched their head and said, how did this happen? And one of the things that people pointed to was this fantastic messaging machine that had grown up around conservative thought, whether it went from think tanks to Matt Drudge to the talk radio shows. And so they thought, we need something like that. And the answer came up, well, the Internet seems to be a thing that is drawing a lot of attention. It's amazing how fast this has all happened.
Exactly.
Looking back
really fast,
14 years ago, we launched, what's that?
I said really fast it happened, Roy. Look at what our society is today. The Internet's the biggest place.
Yeah. When you think, when you look at it and you think when we launched May 9th, 2005. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter, no Instagram. YouTube was only 2 months old. So all these things that we take for granted as part of our daily media diet didn't exist. And so HuffPost sort of stepped into that void. And, we had fantastic timing, and it was right when a lot of attention was turning to the Internet. And we were smart about how we handled it and became this sort of new media juggernaut, which I think really changed the way people consumed media and how they found their media. And it was an amazing ride.
A definite amazing ride, and now look how large it is. Roy, and so you're really not involved at all anymore with the Huffington Post, or are you still? And you talked about taking that step back.
No, only in spirit. Only in spirit. You leave your creative DNA and watch as it goes on, just like your children. And you look from the side with pride. But neither Ariana nor I are at the Huffington Post anymore.
I didn't even know Ariana wasn't. Oh my gosh, so you're telling me things, it's news. Here's the funny thing, Roy. I always use you when I cover my education shows for education talk because it became so controversial. Your education section in the Huffington Post is the best. The topics can just get conservatives and liberals going and just go after each other, which is so fantastic. And I use a lot of your news to cover specific things on my radio show, my education talk show. So
that's what we always wanted to do.
Yeah.
We always wanted to create this place where ideas could be exchanged and, people could, from both sides, could weigh in and people could get informed. That was really the main goal.
And that's what it is. It's great content. You guys hit the news the best. There's a spin sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, but not all the time. And everyone else quoted it. Just think about Rush Limbaugh, how much he has quoted the production, the Huffington Post, and ripping on it, but these are the best PR in the world, wasn't it? Because every conservative still goes and reads the Huffington Post together.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And Neil, and I get what you're saying about spin or point of view or attitude, but I think that was one of the defining things that made Huffington Post stand out so much was that we were not afraid to have an opinion. We were not afraid to have a point of view. We were not afraid to put attitude into our headlines. Not with an agenda that we were going to change people's minds or anything, but to definitely have a point of view and be willing to be funny, even though you were talking about serious things at times. And I don't mean funny like I hope my book is funny.
It's great.
Kind of funny.
It's
a witty funny. Ooh, that's smart funny. Headlines that make you go, wow.
They're the best headlines.
That kind of approach.
Roy, they're the best headlines. Headline is such an important thing for people to click on. And before fake news, the Huffington Post was the best with the headline. You guys created that headline and say the wow factor, I'm going to click and read. And sometimes it would give us that, sometimes it wouldn't, but at least it was real news. Not like the fake news on Facebook now, by the way. That you spot.
No, I won't take all the credit, but I was very interested in the early days in helping establish the voice of the Huffington Post, where you could read a headline, and even if you didn't see anything else and just saw the headline, you'd go, oh, that's the Huffington Post. That's the way that they present things, And that love of words and that love of wordplay is what I found so pleasurable when I was writing this book, Lack Self-Control, is I got to just sort of go and follow my own path, but play with words, try to be funny, try to be witty, try to be surprising. And so that was really my goal. I had two goals in writing this book. One was I wanted to be as funny as I possibly could be. And two, I wanted to be as honest as I could possibly be. Because these are all true stories. And as I was writing them, Neil, I got to tell you, every now and then my wife would duck her head in and she'd say, what are you writing about today? And I tell her, she'd go, really? You're going to tell that story? I'd say, don't send to me yet. Let me at least write it, and then we could decide not to publish it. Let me at least, explore the truth of it as much as I can, and then I can decide whether I want to put it out in the world or not. Because I've always been a guy who kind of lived out loud and was willing to talk about things that people sometimes weren't willing to talk about. It's funny because it turns out that's kind of always been my personality. We recently had a high school reunion. I don't want to tell you the years, but it was 40. So it was our 40-year high school reunion, and I went back, and a lot of people knew that I'd worked on this book, and they were like, Roy, it's funny, you were always like that. You always said things that made the teachers kind of blush and laugh and go, oh, Roy. And by the way, that's the title of the book, Lack Self-Control. That came from me finding a trove of report cards from elementary school that my mother kept. And when I found them, I saw that every year, every grading period, the teachers would say, Roy needs to develop some self-control. Roy lacks self-control. We wish Roy would sit down and shut up.
Roy, it sounds like the book
became, my way of looking at things. When I was younger, I would look at it and sort of feel embarrassed, like, ooh, do I have a behavioral problem? Am I a bad kid? And then as I got older, I realized, no, lack self-control doesn't mean, you do whatever your impulse tells you. But for me, it means that you sort of don't have to draw within the lines. You can go outside the lines.
Yes.
You can think outside the box. Just because everybody is marching to the right doesn't mean that there's not some really interesting things over there on the left side. And I don't mean that politically.
Well, the funny thing is, Roy, I guess the great thing is, again, you are the dream writer that somebody would love to have been part of this whole Huffington Post movement. You are going to be in the history books forever when it comes to digital media and what you've done. And now you have a book that people can laugh about, understand your life, and learn more about who this guy was. I just love Happy Days. I've gotten to talk to a lot of the cast now and get to catch up with them a few times. So I'm excited to welcome to the program Donnie Most. We all remember him as Ralph Mouth. Donnie, thanks for calling. And Happy Days. You just love your fans, don't you? Especially the years and years and everyone coming up to you of fond memories of Happy Days, right?
Oh, I sure do. And communicating with them sometimes, in social media, it's great to hear the kind of the response that I get from people. They have such emotional ties to it. I guess during periods of when they were growing up and going through things, and people will say, "Oh, it helped me get through so many tough times," or I was going through a recovery from some illness, and I would laugh watching the show, and those kinds of, and then of course just people who just love the show and are so excited to get to talk and meet. So I appreciate that. So I think I just appreciate it almost more now than when I was younger, because it was hard to comprehend how these people, like you're doing this show in this insulated soundstage, and it's hard to comprehend how many people it's reaching,
That's the cool thing, yeah. Through syndication and getting it out there and social media and getting it to the fans in so many aspects, Donnie, it's awesome. I mean, it's something that I could not, I guess the dream would be a TV opportunity at one point of how I built myself independently, but I appreciate the plug and these things when you do these radio tours and getting to continue to reach out to fans of Happy Days. But why is there not shows like Happy Days anymore? Because I grew up watching it. It was such an inspiring show. It was funny. It had great stories, and also the characters we really grew to love. It's too bad we don't have these shows anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. People ask me that and say, it was the kind of show that you could watch with a whole family and sometimes several generations, grandparents and all the way down to their grandkids. And, I think the fact that it took place in the 50s, and at the time we were doing it was in the 70s, so it was a nostalgic look at a period. But yet, then it became more than that because of the characters and people, just loved all the characters, and we had great writers and our director Jerry Paris who and Gary Marshall, our exec producer. So it was just one of those fortuitous, sort of lightning in a bottle of bringing the right people together at the right time, and it's hard to explain it.
We have to introduce, Donnie, the millennials to the Happy Days, meaning Netflix. I'm just bringing up a plug. You guys have to pick this up, meaning, we've when all through my time, Donnie, it was on, for a certain amount of years. I'm sure I could still find it on some TV network, but it used to be on all the time, prime time for years and years. Netflix, because of our new generation of kids, they all, binge watch. I guarantee they would love this show. So come on, Netflix, pick it up, put it on the stream, and get kids to see what really family life should be and stories and things that happen in Happy Days and how so many of your parents grew up this way, watching this.
Yeah, that would be cool if Netflix picked it up. It's been on MeTV a lot, and maybe Hulu possibly, but I like your idea. I hope they pick up on that.
Yeah, it's just putting on, and then watch this. It's so funny. Certain shows they talk about, like The Office, like, oh, I never watched it on TV. These millennials tell me, and I'm like, but I stream it and binge watch it. I'm like, that's what we have to watch out for. So, Donnie, that's where we're all battling now, is the new era of the way we get our name out there has changed so much because of things like these streaming services. So, Donnie, tell us about your music again. You have continued, this music lives on, Donnie, doesn't it? And your new album, tell us about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always loved this kind of music, which is the great standards, the great American songbook, and especially for me with a jazz approach. Swing and big band and jump blues and that really fun, infectious sound, and that at times can be electric when it's done right. And I've been lucky to work with some great musicians and arrangers, and one in particular who did my CD, a guy named Willie Mario, who's a major talent, and he put together an amazing a bunch of LA jazz-based musicians, and it's called Mostly Swinging. And I'm doing a lot of the wonderful, wonderful songs of that period. The 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and it swings. This band cooks, and it's music that I was doing this when I was a singer before I was an actor. So it's not like, it's a novelty thing for me. This was a passion of mine, and I'm just having a blast doing it.
Well, this is Jenna J. Am I pronouncing it right?
You are right, Dave. And you're a long ways away, but you sound like you're next door. I'm so glad to talk to you this morning.
Oh, well, you are an amazing lady. I've been reading up on you. Ladies Division National Fiddling Championship, continued performing internationally, leader of her own band with orchestra. And what are you, in your 70s? Oh, my gosh. And you played with Skaggs, Clint Atkins.
What on earth are you reading? We never talk years.
Wikipedia. You ever heard of it?
Oh, yeah. Wikipedia has me wrong. I need to get somebody.
Oh, really? We'll give you the opportunity to correct it then.
Oh, well, I think I better get somebody to correct that Wikipedia for sure. But anyway, you got most of it right. And I've been playing since I was 2 years old. And my folks both
I saw the picture.
Yeah, my folks both went to Juilliard, not too far from you guys. And Juilliard Music School, and famed School of Music in New York City.
Wow.
And so that's
Juilliard, too. They didn't say that. That's great.
Yeah, they both went to Juilliard, both violinists. That's where they met. And my dad thought I was going to be a child prodigy. His child prodigy, I had to practice an hour a day at age 2. But my granddaddy, my mom's dad, was a champion fiddle player. So guess what happened?
Jenna, you became a fiddle player then, right? You became a fiddle player.
Well, I do both. But my living has been, hee-haw kind of brought me to the national scene and made a real career in music possible because of all that wonderful exposure. And I'm still playing with my hee-haw friends. We're doing some touring this fall. So I'm really excited about that. They're wonderful folks. We had a great run. They're on hee-haw. That show, I wasn't on it all the time, but that show ran for 26 years.
Holy cow.
And,
that's amazing.
And syndication, the networks all turned it down. They thought, it's too hokey.
Right.
They turned it down, and it ran in syndication. Heavy viewership for 26 years. So have to appreciate hee-haw.
That's Appalachian prejudice. That's what that is.
Right. Well, it was kind of almost a spin-off from Laugh-In. Laugh-In was real popular right then, and this was kind of a country version in a way. But they had really good music and all the current stars.
Oh, yeah.
It had to be on hee-haw to be anybody, and when you're trying to make it in the business. And so the music was really, really good. And of course the girls were pretty, and
that was my favorite part.
Of course. And there was a lot. We're going to have Misty on our show this fall. Misty and Lulu and Buck Trent. And Roy has been a little bit under the weather, but he's getting lots better. So he may join us too. You never know.
Well, that was before country was cool. In fact, that might have made country cool.
I think it did. I think you have it exactly right. Yeah. Brought it to every American home. Yeah.
So, Jenna, it brought
how did you first become a star on Hee Haw? I mean, was it Buck?
It was Buck who I became a member of Buck's band, and that took me to Hee Haw. And then, I was the world's first Buckarette, he would say on stage.
What?
But we did.
How'd you meet him?
How did I meet Buck? It was Redding, California, and I was teaching. I had started a string program, was teaching, in grade school, high school, and the college. And
Wow.
kind of, yeah. So it was real busy, and this guy at the college said, hey, you've got to meet Buck Owens. He's coming to town to do a couple shows here at the college. I said, okay, well, if I can. And he told Buck, you've got to meet this girl. She's just a great fiddle player. You just got to meet her. So he is the one who arranged for us to meet. So Buck did 2 shows. I went backstage in between the shows, met Buck, and I had a full day of teaching. I really wasn't really expecting to be on stage, but I was really looking forward to meeting Buck, of course. And then
Sure.
He said, you got to play Orange Blossom Special. Can you play that? I said, oh, yeah, every fiddle player in the world can play Orange Blossom Special. He had me play a little bit for him backstage. And so they brought me on, and I played Orange Blossom with Don Rich on stage. And that was almost Don's last show. But, he was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident. So, I don't know.
Jenna, that's amazing. Now, what struck you so much about Buck? What struck you so much with Buck when meeting him? What kind of gave you that wow factor to say, okay, I want to continue to talk to this guy?
Yeah. Well, I really wasn't thinking about, future with Buck. I wanted Jack McFadden, his manager, I wanted him to book my bluegrass band. And so I kept in touch with Jack, called him about every week. Oh, Buck wowed me, of course. I mean, Buck was just a real true professional and, was just awesome on stage. And when they brought me on stage, it brought the house down because Buck egged the audience on for sure. And he always did that. He was a real showman. So, of course, I was impressed with Buck. But I had asked Jack McFadden, the manager, to book our bluegrass band. I said, we've got this fantastic bluegrass band. We're playing out at the French Gulch Hotel, packing them in and blah, blah, blah. And so about every week or two, we'd talk to each other just briefly about the bluegrass band and what I was doing and so forth. Well, we were playing in the summer. I was free, of course, and so we agreed to play at Tia Maria's in Sacramento. And one day I got a call from Jack McFadden, and he said, I need you to get down here to Bakersfield. I need to get you down here right away. Just get a plane ticket and get down here. I said, well, is this for the bluegrass?
That's my neighborhood now.
Okay, we're close to Bakersfield.
I'm in Castaic Lake. I got a gas station right on Interstate 5 at the bottom of the Grapevine.
You're kidding.
You probably pulled in to my gas station at one time or another to use the restroom, because everybody does.
I probably have been there more than once. No, because I used to make that drive all the time.
Jenna, how about Pittsburgh?
How about get from north to south?
How about Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Have you played in Pittsburgh, Jenna?
It's been a long time since I've been in Pittsburgh, but I do love Pennsylvania. That's my roots. My dad's family they're not really Amish. They were brethren, but they're all in East Stroudsburg and Hershey area. And we have a Meyer cemetery back there, and a lot of family still. Wonderful, wonderful people. My granddad was president of the Elizabethtown College, and anyway, they were wonderful people, and from that area, and still have family roots there. So I love Pennsylvania. I need to come back there. In fact, I talked to a gal about booking me into Pennsylvania. So, can you tell I love playing and meeting people and being in different parts of the country and the world. I really do love sharing music. And
I love that,
I'm just on fire about it still. I just love doing it. And we're putting on this festival this weekend. We've got people coming from all over the country. And it's just an exciting thing to do, when you see people really enjoying music and sharing.
I'm so excited that you're so excited. I can tell that this isn't just a job for you, that this isn't a 9 to 5. You're really having fun in the sunset years of your life. That's my wish too.
Yeah, I love it. I just love it. It's great. I don't feel sunset. I feel like things are just starting.
You don't sound sunset either.
We're going to Romania this summer. I will have performed in 50 countries at that time. So that takes a few years to do that.
Jenna, you performed. So Jenna performed in Romania. Is going to perform in Romania, but maybe never Pittsburgh. You're going to have to go back to your list. It's funny. Go Romania before Pittsburgh, but you have to come there for sure, Jenna.
Okay. I'll do it. Yeah, I want to meet you in person. That would be wonderful.
And I'd love to meet you in person as well. We hit both sides of the coast.
Oh yes. Well, see, that's why I ended up in Tulsa and Grove in Oklahoma, because it's right in the center. And I can go any direction and get back home. And because when I went out on my own, after being with the Buckaroos and Buck, they were booking me on Jim Halsey Company in Tulsa started booking me, and they were sending me from California all the way to the East Coast, and it'd take me a day to fly out there and a day to fly back, 2 little kids. And, it was wearing. So, I ended up, the Jim Halsey Company, was starting the Tulsa Opry and a few other endeavors in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he said, why don't you come play the Tulsa Opry, help us get it started and so forth. anyway, I ended up moving to Tulsa. And it really took, and I found out I have, on my mom's side, I have roots in the area also.
Oh, wow.
So that's really good. It's almost like I've come full circle, but it allows me to travel to the West Coast and get back, and travel to the East Coast and get back. So I do like being in the center with all the traveling. And now Romania is a little farther. What?
So you have roots in Romania? You're part Romanian?
No. I have roots in Oklahoma.
Well, that makes more sense.
I like the Jenna. I like the Pennsylvania Dutch part and the Amish portion, because my mother is from that area over in Hershey as well, Harrisburg area, Lemoyne. So it's interesting. It's always a small world. Let's jump to your favorite moments on Hee Haw. What would you say, Jenna, of being on the show for 26 years? What were your favorite moments?
Well, I was not on the show for 26 years, because when I came along, it was toward the end of the taping. It was just the last 5 years of the show. The show was going on a long time ago when I was, I wasn't even aware of the show for a while. But I was on for about the last 5 years of their taping. But we're still all really good friends. And I got in on the best part, I think. But anyhow, favorite moments would have to include whatever happened right before we did the cast going on camera. Like Gaylord Sartain would crack a joke and we'd all laugh, and then they'd turn, the cameras would be rolling for the picking and grinning scenes, or, when they had the whole cast there. And
a lot of ad-libbing, huh?
Yeah, some ad-libbing, but it was, before the camera rolled, it was definite ad-libbing and hilarious. And
chemistry.
It was what brought us together, I think, those full cast scenes and the jokes and the sitting next to each other, and she'd come in and powder our nose once in a while. But it was a time to we'd chat a little bit when the camera wasn't on, and I think those were the times that brought us close together. It's kind of like a great big family. And of course it was fun because we were all laughing and having a good time, and I think that came across. That's one of the things that reached into people's lives. Yeah.
I just loved it. I was just a kid, like 12 years old, and I was just drawn to it. So and you're reuniting with all these people, right? The Cornfield Friends.
We've been in touch. But Sam Lavello, the producer, just passed away last year, and they asked me to come play for his celebration. We did an actual show. And so we got many of the folks who had not only the cast, but the folks, primarily the cast, but the people who had been on Hee Haw. They were all so supportive and came to honor Sam, and it was a great, big, wonderful gathering, and that, spurred a lot of ideas. And I had already asked Lulu to be on these festivals that we present in Grove on Grand Lake, Oklahoma. And that's what I'm doing this weekend. So I'd already asked Lulu. Lulu had come a couple of times to be on the shows. And I had asked Nurse Goodbody. And a few years back, I'd asked George Lindsay. He came. So I had, we've been in touch the whole time. But this now, we're kind of organized into a tour. I still have my bus.
Oh my!
And so we're just gonna book shows and have fun touring.
That's so amazing, Jana, when you talk about, getting and reminiscing, coming back. How many stories? I would just love to be on the bus with the stories that you guys have from traveling, really.
Right.
She needs to write a book. That's what she needs to do.
That's a great idea. I should
It is a great
that.
idea. I can hook you up with some people to help you with that.
You're kidding. No, that's what
No, everybody needs to write a book.
Well,
I've written 3, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I thought of that so many times. It's just time. But if I had a good co-author, maybe that would happen.
I know a great ghostwriter for you, because nobody has time to write a book, especially you, it sounds like. We'll hook up.
That is wonderful. Wow. I
bet you can fill it up.
I could fill it up real fast. Yeah, it's
definitely.
It's been great.
I think so for sure. Again,
all right, it's done.
We're talking to Jana J from Hee Haw. Now let's talk about life after Hee Haw and trying to just segue into that. After it was over, again, you're a country music star as well, not just this. Hee Haw is one of your things on your resume. So tell our listeners, especially me being an East Coast guy, just learning more and more about country music in the past couple years, especially when I had Lynn Anderson on my show just before her passing, just really all that stuff. So tell us about that.
Well,
and she has a great voice, too.
Well, I do. We do a complete show. I mean, I have a wonderful band. And I'll play with a symphony or whatever because I love I can do all the classical. I still do chamber music, and that's quartets, classical, to keep the chops up. And but anyway, the country music business is another great big extended family, and so many wonderful friends. And I've played with so many. Comes to mind people like Kenny Rogers, Marianne on Hee Haw, married Kenny. Yeah. She was the gal in the swing with Fan, and she married Kenny Rogers. Yeah. And we played tennis together with Buck, Marianne, Kenny, and Buck and me.
Oh, fun. That'd be a great book.
But beyond that, I've met all these wonderful Steve Warner, the Oak Ridge Boys, Roy Clark, Chet Atkins was a very close friend. Chet and I both instrumentalists, and he had me on his show a lot. We did recording and just did a lot with Chet, and a wonderful, wonderful person. Of course, Roy Clark, all the people who were on Hee Haw, the Gatlin brothers. I just did that great big Hodag festival last summer in Wisconsin with the Gatlins and Leroy Van Dyke and Bobby Bear.
How about Earl and Scrubs and Grandpa Jones and Glenn Campbell?
Yes,
when they were still alive.
Absolutely. Earl Scruggs, the last I remember, we were in New York City. That I can't think of the name of the place right now, but I had a great big lizard on top of the building, and a paper mache or whatever it was, and but Lone Star, I think it was called Lone Star. Anyway, it was a great evening, and I've done other bluegrass. I've done a lot of the bluegrass festivals too. So Earl Scruggs was on some.
And you've been in Nashville, probably, obviously.
I had a place on Music Row. And yes, I had a place on Music Row. I just did last February, late January, I guess it was, Ray Stevens' Cabaret grand opening, and saw a lot of my industry friends there in Nashville.
I love Ray Stevens.
Oh yes, and he's a genius. He's just a marvelous guy too.
Yeah.
He and Chet and I all had houses there on Music Row in Nashville for a while, and but I ended up being pulled to, it was so easy in Tulsa to fly all directions and so forth, and for my kids it was a little bit of a good spot. So that's where I ended up. But I still go to Nashville all the time, of course. Love Nashville. Oh, my gosh. It has grown.
Yeah, me too. I used to own an apartment building there. I just love the place.
absolutely amazing how it has grown. I think that, of course, hee-haw.
It's the new L.A.
It is just incredible, the growth.